Hey everyone, welcome back to the Archangel 15. Thanks for taking the time to stop in as always. Today I have a very special presentation for you. This is a dedication to the people that perished on September 11th, 2001, and also a deeper understanding into the harmonics of the World Trade Towers and 528 hertz frequency. I want to start off, with a dedication. This is not just dedicated to the people that perished in the World Trade Towers on September 11th, 2001, but also people that came down in the plane in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, my home state. I've heard rumors that it was actually brought down by a fighter jet. Also, the people that perished in the Pentagon attack as well. Particularly, I want to dedicate this to the firefighters and the police officers, New York NYPD, and the firefighters from New York City as well. I feel a very special median and spiritual connection to these people almost. And if you just think about how cool it would have been to live in New York City in the 80s and not in the 70s, I guess you could say too, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and to have lived through the stories they could tell. I mean, if you could just take any random person that perished and listen to their stories. I mean, there was probably people that literally would go knocking on doors, and people would just start shooting at the door, and or firefighters that were coming out of a building, and 2 minutes after they came out of a building, the whole thing collapsed. I mean, you could just imagine how exciting it would have been, in the, like I said, in that period of time, everything going on, kind of embraces the peak of American culture, in my opinion. And the late 80s and early 90s, in my opinion, after 9/11 is when it all went down. Everybody, I'm 35 years old. Anybody that's my age, remembers where they were when this all went down. I was in school. I remember it very well, and just the aftermath and the carnage, and just everything changed after that day. And for instance, I mean, you used to be able to just turn on the TV and sit back and watch a show, whether it was Seinfeld, The Simpsons, whatever it was that you watched. And after that, it wasn't the same. Life just was, completely different. And in a subsequent, hindsight view, it was obviously done to rape our Constitution and our Bill of Rights of our, Fourth Amendment. And, the very next day, the Patriot Act came in. I'm going to kind of get into deeper aspects of this, but it's pretty conclusive that, it was either facilitated or perpetuated by the United States government. And, I'm going to move on here. So by now, after watching my channel, you know that I'm a huge science lover, and just really big into quantum physics. At one point, first off, the World Trade Centers, I believe they were built in 1973. The World Trade Centers were building number one had the radio antenna, or whatever, the communications antenna, was the tallest building in the world. It surpassed the Empire State Building. And there's very, I've talked about my therapeutic healing practice, and how I'm really big into various alternative aspects of medical science, and I have various presentations on this channel. And I was into, when I did this practice before the whole COVID thing hit, I got into Reiki, reflexology, acupressure, acutonics, sound balancing using weighted and unweighted tuning forks. And that's just a few things. Homeopathy, and here's a unweighted fork. Here's a weighted fork. I get into, it's really cool, is acutonics, where I place them on various chakra points and meridian points of your body, very similar to acupuncture, but basically no needles involved. And so I have several years that I've been experimenting with various forks and various frequencies. And you've probably seen various videos of mine if you're not new to my channel, and I've talked about it in the past. My Theory of Everything presentation series. I've also have a whole entire video dedicated to ley lines and earth energies. And you'll see that I'm a very competent speaker and well informed on ley lines and earth energies. And there's basically two ways that you can create these energies. One is, most of them are natural, certain points on the earth, just there's a special energy there. Usually it correlates to either water that's flowing underneath, or civilizations that were there in past years. One cool one that nobody really talks about is in Pittsburgh, there's three rivers. There used to be Three River Stadium, where there's three rivers that come together Philadelphia is the birthplace of freedom, Independence Hall, and other aspects there. Washington D.C. That's just in this country. You go to other places, around the world. Egypt, big one. The pyramids of Giza. A lot of people say that they were like power generation stations, and obviously tombs to commemorate the dead. In China, the Great Wall of China, the Chinese pyramids. There's like certain chakra points. Gets into this like harmony of our bodies. Like our body has certain chakras. The earth has certain chakras. Not going to go into this because I've talked about it a lot in the past. But I often visit my sister, Rebecca. She lives and works in the D.C. area. She does a lot of teleworking now. I go down there to play with her son. My nephew, Gabriel. He's a lot of fun to play with. He's a couple, 2.5 years old. And she lives on the 10th story of a building. And when I go there, I sleep directly on the ground. And some people are more acute to feeling earth energies and like just the various effects on your mental and physical states. And I'm able to definitely feel a difference. Just sleeping on the ground of like the 10th story, and like the energy channel. It's also right next to the Potomac River, and the energy channels. And like to think about like, if you're ever at like a red light and you see like where like the red light comes out post, you can see that it has like a slight vibration to it. And this happens in the taller the building, that the more proneness is to occurring. Obviously, there's different architectural aspects, but you can kind of understand. Basically, right before I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and right when I'm waking up is when I notice the biggest difference. Like almost like it changes your brain waves, or it lets you connect to a different frequency of sorts. Almost maybe like an antenna effect as well. I don't know. I talked in the past about extremely low frequencies, ELFs. Understand that like when you're getting into tuning forks, the bigger the fork, this is the biggest one I have. This is a 54.8. It's weighted. May not be able to hear it. The bigger the fork, the lower the frequency in hertz. And the inverse of that, the smaller, the shorter the fork, the higher the frequency and the higher the pitch. And like this is my 639. Also the same as open E on the violin. But 20 hertz, anything below 20 hertz, the human, you can't hear it. It's like it's outside the range of human hearing. There's other maybe migratory birds or other things that can hear it as well. But it's got me thinking on a larger scale. Like it's this whole concept of the bigger the fork, the lower the frequency, and the shorter, and so forth. What would happen if you made, like I said, like a tuning fork all the way up to the sky? And I started thinking about what resembles this type of thing. And first, what is the closest thing that we even may already have to this? And like before I actually even got into my tuning fork stuff, I pretty much came to the conclusion, like understanding, like reading a lot of Nikola Tesla's work, where like you can almost channel energy through like any like freestanding structure or something like that. And like bridges was the first thing that came to mind. Like a bridge is like a large span bridge. It's like a huge piece of metal and like grounded to the earth. And also note that the Earth has an electromagnetic pulse rate of 7.83 hertz. It's not consistent in all areas of the world, given the curvature of the Earth. But it's basically a rough, number you can go by, 7.83. So the bridges, I kind of took this a little bit further. There, again, where my sister lives, there's a large bridge, the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. It crosses the Potomac River. And goes in between Alexandria, Virginia, and National Harbor, Maryland. And when you walk, like basically, I've noticed that this walking across this bridge has a certain effect. Like maybe the architectural layout has something to do with it. Like underneath of it, there's like the girders almost have like a wave design built into them. Maybe if it didn't have that, maybe it wouldn't have the same effect. I really probably believe that's a lot of the cause. It's like the design of the structural steel. I used to actually do steel erection for a while, and when you get into the rough hanging raw iron, like the beams and the columns and everything, like it's not real tight. Like it's not until later when you go back and tighten everything up. It's got a lot of wobble, and it's like part of the engineering design to the whole thing. And I've spent a lot of time also in tree stands as well. Notice like tall trees. When you're up there, not only does it sway back and forth, but it channels like a certain energy from being grounded to the earth. And I don't know any other hunters out there on this channel. Maybe they can relate to what I'm saying. But definitely, like I said, okay, so we have the bridges, the buildings, and then also, like I said, trees. Tall, big tall trees. The trees kind of almost have like a different energy aspect to them, just because they're living things, and they emit a different kind of energy as well. Like I believe you can like see it on thermoimaging devices and other things. It gets into like the cytokinesis, the cell replication. But I got to thinking even bigger. Like, okay, like I said, like when I saw the underbottoms of certain bridges and how there's different designs incorporated in them. Some of them have like arches, other things. What about if we like took this further into like certain buildings as well? And like boom, it just like it hit me, and I was like, where, would like have we seen, this tuning fork design already, like already in, structures, the World Trade Center, like it already was there, like we already had it. And then like I got to thinking like, my guess is, at that point in time in the 1970s, like there was probably people that were like deep into the love of physics and like probably also played musical instruments and had like a knowledge of various frequencies and tuning forks, and like they were basically already ahead of me before I was even born, with what I was thinking. And like I knew right away that if there was a certain fork that it was going to be modeled after, like the proportionality the same, it would be the 528. So like if you're new to the whole concept of the solfeggio scale, basically there's like, if you look, there's a company called Metavibe. Go on Metavibe. They're tuning fork company. They have probably hundreds, thousands. There's another company I recently just started using SWB 256. I think they're out of Leesburg, Virginia. Smaller outfit. I like their forks as well. Eileen Day McCusick, where I first started. This is the one I'm going to use. This is actually hers. The Biofield Tuning 528 DNA 528's DNA repair. Like different, like they have like chakra tuning forks. They're like certain ones you're supposed to use in certain chakras. They have the solar harmonic spectrum. They have the solfeggio scale. They have the archangel tuners. Like innumerable stuff. Stuff for musical. High C, middle C, low C. Like musical scales. It goes on and on. I mean, you could literally spend thousands upon thousands of dollars just in tuning forks alone. I have a nice little collection. I'm happy with what I have. Maybe someday if my practice picks up, I'll get into more of them, and have some other kind of science experiments I'd like to do with them as well. But the frequency of 528 hertz is very, very, very special. It's like the frequency of love. It's the frequency that like everything radiates in life, like blades of grass, and like I said, it stimulates DNA healing, and I've tried. So I started like, okay, like I said, like I'm gonna try to do some rough math. Like my past, I'm horrible at math. And I wanted to like basically try to do like configure various scales and proportionalities and calculate it to see, the difference between the length of the forks and the length of the towers and the distance between the two structures. And this is what I came up with. And again, I already knew that if there was one fork to try it on, that it would be the 528 hertz fork. And there's actually some various sites on this as well. This is not like a new concept that I, concocted in my head. And, there's other sites. They didn't really come up with the same numbers and stuff that I got. But I'll show you what I have anyway. And, ultimately, there's a lot of other things. It would, like, because it's such a big scale, I'm not saying that these buildings emitted a frequency. If it was, maybe it was in like megahertz or kilohertz, or like, some type of different scale of measurement. And, also note that with the 7.83 hertz Schumann resonance, that like is basically like connected to the earth, which is already like a generation station. So like there was like the effects in this are not really applicable to like what I'm showing you here with a tuning fork, but it's really, really cool what I came up with anyway. So tower number 1 was 1,355 feet in length. Tower number 2 was 1,348 feet in length. The mean height of these two together, if you add them and divide them by 2, is 1,351 and a half. The distance between the two buildings was approximately 200 feet. So when you divide 1,351 by 200, you get roughly 7.5 or 7.75 or 7.76. And then, okay, so I take my 528 hertz fork and measure first the gap in between the forks. You get 14 is the gap, the distance. So then you measure like the overall length of, so like I said, it was 14 centimeters. Sorry, it was 14 centimeters of distance. Then 95 centimeters roughly is the like the length of the fork, like down here all the way up. So you divide that, and you get 6.78 roughly in there. 6.75, 6.75 somewhere in there. 6.78 if you want to round up. So it's basically almost the exact same proportionality, in between, with this fork, the 528, and the trade towers. Kind of cool there. There's other things, like the antenna tower on trade tower number 1 that would have affected this as well. But I don't think it's by chance that Minoru Yamasaki, the architect, incorporated these dimensions and these proportionalities into his architectural design. Like I said, in my Theory of Everything presentation on ley lines and earth energies, I mentioned, how certain man-made structures can like alter these Lagrange points. And like per my last presentation, I asked, what is time? I truly believe that at these Lagrange points that like you can create yourself, I guess, with like, like certain, like when you build like a spiritual shrine, a pyramid, certain geometric formations, there's different ways you can do it. Sacrifices on a certain spot, running water, a well, have concentric circles. There's innumerable ways. Gets into spiritualism as well. But you can like kind of make a spot to resonate energy, or even like a bar where people went to all the time, or people want certain places where people work, or a traffic light maybe where certain people come to all the time, or who knows, maybe a corner where people buy drugs, or whatever. I don't know. Like there's like innumerable elements to this. The Silk Road, very special energy there. They sold silk and opium for many years in between Persia and China. There's something magical about the Twin Towers. And I'll show you a picture here. My uncle gave me this picture. I don't really have a good way to put it in. New York, 1984. It was actually all drawn by hand in black and white. Really, really cool. My Uncle Al was moving and had some extra pictures, so he gave me that. You see I have a Chinese flag above it, and like I basically postulated, like kind of extrapolated everything in my head, and like the end game in the world as far as like trade and everything goes is China. Like for years and years and years they did everybody's dirty work. They made everything for the entire world for all these years, and it's like now they want the acclaim, and they want what they want the respect that they deserve, essentially. And then like other countries, are very prestigious as well, like Japan. They make a lot of stuff as well, like a lot of automobiles, a lot of electronics. But the Chinese, the Russians, and like a few others are like the only ones that really didn't sell out to the Zionists. And I really see like Edgar Cayce, the godfather of holistic medicine, talked about in his world affairs dialogues that he would do, and he would go in like gamma wave states of mind, like in between sleep and conscious, like the subconscious state. And one of them that he talked about was Russia being like the light of the world, and that like there were from Russia would come the light of the world, and that they would stand up against Zionism. And if you understand, and you've read the book The Art of War, like Russia and China are like so deeply ingrained and embedded in genetic heritage that like they basically are like, I call them root China. They're almost the same. And there was something very, very magical about the trade towers, and certain spots just carry a certain energy. And like if you've ever been there, like I was only there once when I was younger, when like in actual New York when the trade towers were up, After that, it's like it wasn't the same. The whole the cityscape was just altered and changed, and basically, I'm going to end here just with some other little tidbits. And some people may take offense to some of this stuff. I'm very sorry. If you had family members or friends that died in there, I have my opinion, and I'm going to share that. It's very conclusive that the U.S. had prior knowledge, and facilitated the events of that day, or allowed known CIA asset Bin Laden, to carry it out. And like I said, he was a known asset to the CIA. You can look this up and find it for yourself. Like the CIA gave him guns and money for many years. And I found over that it also very interesting. There's certain people that didn't show up that day. Like there were certain floors that were like completely empty. Like the people like just didn't come in. Like or like one or two people did. Really interesting there. And also there's these videos or these recordings that are like you can't find them anywhere because they're like classified and like the government took. There's like all this stuff that the government went and took like pertaining to this, like home footage video, people that were on vacation, other things, just like really, 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 really quirky. But there's these these FAA, Federal Aviation Administration or Association recordings that said, "Is this another simulation? Or is this a real event?" And like basically like 2-3 weeks before this happened, they were doing simulations of the exact same thing. Really, really weird there. Also in Donald Trump's book written 18 months prior to the attacks, he literally mentions Bin Laden by name and talks about a large-scale attack on the World Trade Centers. And like I find it like it was just too eerie. Like, and it's not because Donald Trump's a prophet. I assure you that. Like I said, this book was written 18 months before. If you search, Donald Trump prior knowledge in his book, and then also like you can have your opinions about Alex Jones. I used to be a real big Alex Jones fan. I've really learned a lot of stuff from him, and like I really, will never, like betray the guy. I don't like how he kind of like sold out to the whole Trump thing. I think it was basically to like pacify his viewers, in a very conservative, the very conservative nature of what he talks about. But like the reason that I will stand behind Alex Jones till the day I die is because go type Alex Jones July 25th, which also happens to be my birthday, 2001. Like this is like a couple months before it, and like listen to it. And he says like call the White House, tell them to cancel the attack. Like like literally like really really creepy stuff. Like literally call the White House and tell them to cancel the attack. We know you're planning on blowing up large buildings, he says. Other stuff as well. And people have kookified him over the years. Obviously, he's not right on about everything he says. But again, search July 25th, 1985, Alex Jones. And, like I said, it really just all went downhill after that. There's probably a lot of other stuff I could put in there. If maybe even want to leave some stuff in the comments. But everything, went downhill after that day. And, the Patriot Act raped our, Fourth Amendment. Then we engaged in these fake wars with Iraq and Afghanistan. Where then we took these innocent Muslim people to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, where we tortured them, with like basically like nothing short of war crimes. I have a whole presentation on Iraq and Afghanistan war crimes and like talk about how like we're supposed to be the biggest military in the face of the earth, and we're like picking on these small little countries, and like I really believe that they had to evoke them to anger. Like they would bomb schools or bomb mosques or like bomb like civilian buildings to get these people to retaliate, to like keep the war going, perpetuate. Otherwise, these people would know that they would never stand a chance. Also, I've talked to my good buddy Filippo at the peace tent, the international or the anti-nuclear proliferation peace tent in Washington D.C., right out in front of the White House. It's really cool. He's been there since 1981, 40 years almost. He's been there, and he as long as somebody's there 24 hours a day, they can keep the tent. They tried to shut him down like 56 times, and I was talking about how I really believe that there's nuclear, biological, chemical, electronic, advanced psychological warfare that's going on now, not really this nonsense they talk about with COVID. And he said, yes, he said Nagasaki, and this is like I said in the past presentation I did, if you look a few months ago, you can see it. And he says Nagasaki and Hiroshima were not the only times that nuclear weapons were used. There was a time Israel used them, I believe, something like that. And there was also... he said that they were used in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I think this is like big, like this is on like some Edward Snowden level secure, like a data breach, or not a data breach, but you get what I'm saying, whistleblower aspect. And then, like I said, we had the bid rigging, and the people just lined their pockets on this. These companies like Halliburton, they were a lot of people that say that they were in Iraq for the oil, and then Afghanistan for the lithium, and then the poppies came into it as well. There's video you can search: Marines guard poppy fields. They literally have Marine Corps Marines guarding poppy fields. The media propaganda is sickening. Like, I remember countless times turning on like Fox News and then other news syndicates, and how they just sold this to the American people was nothing short of criminal, absolutely criminal. Like detestable, horrible, 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 irreprehensible chapter in American history, and it'll leave its scars, on future generations to come. And it's no wonder a lot of countries, have a major disdain for the the United States and the red, white, and blue. You know, like I said, I want to leave this on a positive note, and they have these two cavities there, where the trade centers once stood. I was there this last summer. It was like completely dead in New York City. It was didn't feel like New York City whatsoever. But never must we forget that day. Again, we thank our first responders, and people who really are not afraid to give their lives in this type of a situation. And there's something to be respected about that. Again, please leave your comments, or any information that maybe you have as well. And I appreciate you stopping in on the Archangel 15. Take care, folks.